No brain wants to know what brain most deeply desires. What I desire? Brain laughs. What I want most of all is to relinquish control. I want it to rain or not rain. I want to scream, to be fucked. I want to be given lots of money or none at all. I want to be institutionalized. I want to be famished in a hospital or well-fed in a prison. I want all the channels to be selected for me so that all I have to do is switch things on or off. I want to hand over my fate to a lucky number, a lucky charm. I want to be submissive if it means I can be unaware of my own submission. I want to be an automatic writer, an automatic playlist, an automatic window, an automatic car. I want to be a snail, a slug, a single-celled organism. I want to be a fish out of water on the concrete banks of a suburban creek. I want to be so hot I bubble over and so cold my limbs fall off. I want to be a girl, just a girl with a room full of tidy objects. I want to sell everything or lose everything or have nothing to sell. I want to state my cause because my cause is poor. I want you to twist my arm and make me lose big money. I want to believe that each person is either 100% virtuous or pure evil. I want to believe each person. I want to expect nothing of our millionaires or our billionaires or our homeless. I want all the superfluous details to wash over me and make me float. I want to be an absolutely shameless kind of tourist, the worst kind of fan. I want to be thrown from a window like a grand piano still playing heart and soul. I want to believe in any kind of art, any kind at all or no kind. I want to peel myself off the pavement like a cartoon roadrunner. I want to use everything exactly once and never think another thing about it. I want to be forced to eat expired meat until my migraines expire. I want to move from this rock to that rock using only my fists. I want to exit the internet via a horrible book. I want to lose myself in the loudest television. I want to be painted as a kitten with a very common name. I want to be painted as a kitten with 3 legs and a mane. I want to be blown like a naked kite. I want to be written off as an idiot or a complete genius. I want to feel as if the brain is an inside-out sweater, a compressed middle cushion, an exploding middle cushion. I want to be laid like a daisy in a public path. I want to be left on the curb with my bad decisions. I want to be symptomatic in my reasoning about the past and future. I want to be present tense filled with no choice in the matter. I want to move chaotically in the opposite direction of the sun. I want to be sworn at in languages post-grammar. I want to return and find everything exactly as I left it. I want to return to lick the boot of my manager. I want the impossible plus the possible in this universe. I want not love, but a reason to pass. I want to prepare for no more than 2 types of weather. I want to live in a house with a diamond-encrusted toilet. I want to be draped in magazines printed on the wrong kind of paper. I want to breathe in the fumes of the new highway expansion. I want to know my own phone as possessed by abstract buttons. I want to jump into the air and experience no landing. I want to get on a bus to a nowhere town with a super mall. I want to marry young there and settle down in that town. I want to lie down like an egg in the middle of the parking lot, frying, and bear children to a stranger there without expectation, without a brain and a no brain to keep me company, without the particles of dread so clearly formed in my head, without a compelling reason to intellectualize anything, or else I want to remove my head instead.
You're listening to Books on the Bed, where I travel through the country asking our hosts, if I came to your town and stayed at your house, what books would you put on my bed? Each host will share 6 books for me to carry with me on the journey of my life. And I'm here to share those books with you. As we go, we're building a digital library with every book put on every bed across the country. And who knows, maybe someday, the world. We are trying to share as many diverse stories as possible to part a curtain between us and bring us closer to each other. We hope these books and conversations make a meaningful difference in your life. Thank you for listening and being with us on this journey. This is my favorite book of 2025.
Thank you so much, Matt. That's very kind.
And I just knew coming here that was the story that centers everything for me. Us, I guess, in this conversation. And we'll get to why that is as I looked into who you are and what you've done and how you feel about life and yourself and art. But this book has a life in Southern Appalachia that is just like really satisfying to me. I know we joked about like, you know, Americans reading it, but in my little town, this like is a known book.
That's amazing.
I was sitting at our literary festival. So the university's in an unincorporated town. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there reading this again to prepare for this like a month and a half ago. And 3 different people who had come up to the table where I was selling books were like, I keep hearing people talk about this book.
So it's just you spreading rumors. You're the source.
And there are students that are coming to City Lights to buy it. And it just like makes my heart sing
That's wonderful.
that they're loving
Thank
this
you.
book and really engaging with it. And in fact, there's a student that had me bring her copy so she can have it signed by you.
That's wonderful.
She's like your
This is beyond me. But yeah, thank
She's trying to get the director of the Lit Fest to
That's
to
wonderful.
invite you because she's like going to be the intern for the Lit Fest next year. And she's a really good writer as an 18-year-old. Like it's crazy. But it's just like so much fun that
That's really
my love of
fun.
this book is now becoming like communal in a very strange place.
Well, it's wonderful to make friends with the booksellers. I didn't know this before. I didn't suspect it, but now I better understand.
I tell people like, you know, authors better be nice to me because I'm good at what I do.
Yeah, you hold the keys.
Like if I can sell the longest way to eat a melon in rural Appalachia, like I can do anything with books. Okay. So like,
Anything
let's
is
just,
possible.
you know, but yeah, so it's just, it's so cool that I'm here and that like, just young people, professors, like everybody's excited that I'm coming to see you. Like that's kind of a bizarre thing to think about.
It's very bizarre. It's kind of like a bunch of stars that are crisscrossed in the wrong directions, but it's fun that it happens sometimes like that.
And there's another bookseller that works with me, my friend Joey. He's a poet. And I think he said he was thinking about submitting to the Capilano Review years ago.
Cool.
And so when we were leaving work the other day before I was flying out, he's like, this is the longest trip to eat a melon. And this is actually the furthest I've ever gone to interview someone. So
Amazing.
congratulations.
Yes, I love being the destination of your road trip. Thank you.
First interview across the border too. I've never left the country for an interview. So like, this is a huge deal. You probably understand.
Worth that, I hope.
Oh gosh, are you kidding me? I've been looking forward to this since I read your book, and shouts out Kristen Miller too for
Yes.
introducing me to your book.
Yes.
I mean, I might have found it anyway, but it always helps to have that personal, like, you need
Yes.
to do this. So yeah, this is just incredible. And so to thank you for what you've done for me, it's been hard in the US to like enjoy anything. And I read a lot of books, but there aren't a lot of books that make me feel the way that your book did. And like give me a reason to even get up and go sell books because it's exciting that people are still writing stuff like this, you know? So in order to
Thank you, Matt. That's so kind.
express my gratitude,
Oh my goodness. They're wrapped too. They look so worldly.
I got your gifts. So we're going to open these together.
Okay.
And you can start with anyone you want.
Okay. Wow. I love that you wrap them.
I'm serious
dramatic.
about it. I know. I'm a dramatic person. You'll learn. You might have already learned.
This is so fun. Wow. Cool. Okay. It's Little Bird by Claudia Ulloa Donoso. Am I pronouncing that right? Translated from the Spanish by Lily Meyer.
So
Yeah.
Lily Meyer is going to be on Books on the Bed in June.
Wonderful.
And when I read this, I was like, I got to get this for you. Because these stories have a similarly strange and unsettling tune as your book. And I just felt like you're going to devour these stories. And Lily's an incredible writer herself. She has 2 great novels, but, you know, like the translations of books, I like did not read it until the last few years. And so I've just been reading way more translations, and I was like, this is electric. Like every story, no skips. So I figured, oh yeah, also Lily is the art connection between you two. I actually think I had read an article a few years ago where she was writing a book about art society during like World War II.
Cool.
Both of you are 2 of the smartest writers I've ever encountered in my life.
Oh
and
my
so
gosh.
I think
Cool.
you'll really, really love this book.
Wow. This is amazing. I just love even the structure of the table of contents. It's incredible.
Yes.
And for listeners, the blurb says beautiful, magical short stories and texts that explore the strangeness of everyday life. A combination of George Saunders and Samantha Schweblin. That sounds really great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're going to love it.
Exciting. Can't wait to read.
Mm-hmm. So that's one.
Okay, do I keep going?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, this is so fun because I have my birthday's in January, so it's fun to just open presents in the middle of the year in another season.
I aim to please. Because I love thinking about books to give people. I mean, I'm a bookseller, so. Okay,
so you're in the right field.
This one.
Oh my gosh, yeah, amazing.
So Patrick partly grew up here. I don't know if you've heard of Patrick DeWitt.
I've heard, but I have not read any of his books, so this is great.
So I got to interview him at the Mississippi Book Festival a couple of years ago, and I'd read all of his books in prep for that. And of all of them, I loved this one. And I found out later that, like, this was the book that, like, made it difficult for, he's like, should I ever write again? Because he had, his first books were so successful. One got turned into a movie. And then this is his favorite book that he's written, and nobody liked it or read it.
Interesting. Really. And it's under major.
Domo minor.
Domo minor.
By
reading
Patrick
it, it's very
DeWitt.
graphic.
Yes. And so this book, the reason I picked it is partially the Vancouver connection. Like, I'm pretty sure when he started writing novels, he, like, got rid of his TV and just spent all of his time learning how to write in the library here.
Interesting.
And this story has no place, but it's a place. Like, it's a lot like your book in terms of, he doesn't identify where it is.
Yes.
It's just a castle or a field or, like,
interesting.
And it is bizarre. It is a wild, I don't know what happens. I still don't, there's no lesson. I have no idea what goes on. I just know that I love it. So by the end of it, I'm like, damn, that's one of my favorite books, and I can't even totally communicate why. But it is a trip.
Funny. That thing that you just expect, I have no idea what this is about, but I love it, is sort of what I was experiencing with my selections. And I had to basically, like, revisit all of them in detail because I couldn't remember anything about the plot or anything like that. I just know what they are doing, like, emotionally or atmospherically.
Yeah. So this is a book that's so about just the feeling of things.
Yes.
And the weirdness that, like, honestly, there are scenes that are so, like, grotesque and bizarre, and then, like, you're like, why did that even happen? But I love it because I don't need a point. I just tell me a cool story. And there's, like, obviously thematic explorations of things in here, but there's just something very kindred spirit with your book.
This is so exciting. Thank you. These are so on point, these two. You must be a very good bookseller.
It's the first time in my life that I can just say, this is the job I was meant for. It's the one thing I'm good at. And I love it. I want people to read books that they love. And I also want them to discover new ones. And so, like, I think, Patrick's, he's incredible. But this is the one book of all of them that is so, like, different than his others.
Oh, I see.
And that's why people didn't buy it.
Interesting.
Because his other ones, like, even his latest, The Librarianist, is this quiet, beautiful.
Oh, maybe that's the one I've heard of. And
which is
the cover.
really good.
Yeah.
But this is his best novel.
Interesting. So do you think he had trouble publishing this as well, or?
Probably. Yeah. But I think because his first two were so successful that you get some leeway. But then it, like, fell very flat. And so he was so excited when I told him that this is my favorite novel of his, because he's like, thank you. Somebody gets it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a deep cut kind of then. It's kind of like, what year was this one published? And I was just curious. 2015.
Yeah.
I love the title, Under Major Domo Minor. Am I pronouncing it right? It's a wild title.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a wild book.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm excited.
I think all of these gifts, it's like, I'm just trying to think of someone you would connect with as a writer because of how their brain works.
That's really cool. This says an adventure story, a fable without a moral, an ink black comedy of manners, and a love story.
Like,
wonderful.
Come on.
That sounds like a perfect match made in heaven.
I know. It will be.
Cool. Okay. Last book.
Last one for you.
Okay. I love that you're laughing as I'm opening it. That's kind of the greatest thing when you give someone something.
Well, it's just like, I get excited if you.
Oh, amazing. Cool. All right. It's Hilary Leichter. Thank you. Temporary, a novel.
So this book.
With a very beautiful cover.
I picked it because of the, like, dreaming against capitalism angle, just the way of, like, how much it weighs us down in what we do in life. And this book is about people who have temp jobs that are so fucking crazy. And the whole goal is to become permanent P, with a capital P, have a permanent job.
Right.
So, like, literally, she becomes a barnacle on a rock, works on a pirate ship, works in a blimp, has, like, I think 20 different boyfriends that don't know about each other. But it's like, also, you never know where you are. in this book. And so it's a strange, disorienting experience, but it's just like this person who's seeking the ultimate fulfillment of having gainful, steady employment. And I think this is a part of a set of books that came out after, the 2008 crash in the US, that deal with this idea of like being lost without that steady, here's my 9 to 5, here's my life, this is what I do. And so you go on this adventure with this person looking to become permanent.
Interesting. And so the structure of it has some interesting sort of chapters I'm seeing here.
I look at it as, to me, I read it like a story collection.
Yeah.
I didn't read it as a novel.
Onboarding, city work.
Uh-huh.
What's the next one here? I don't know.
Like it reminds me so much of the, oh my God, what is the title of the one with the guy that goes to the big city?
Yeah, Elementary Brioche.
Yes.
Yeah. There's choppy
a lot
titles.
Of
short chapters and kind of fragmented. Interesting.
Of those. Yeah. So it's so good. I can't believe this one actually doesn't sell that well. It's hard for me to sell it because I think some people are like, well, why would I want to read about someone who's like becomes a barnacle? But I'm like, but they're not, like literary fiction can be hit or miss. But
so is the idea with the barnacle that is understood to be a form of temporary employment? The barnacle?
Yeah. Working
or is that a permanent job? I don't know.
It could be, I suppose. But in this case, it's just like you get shipped off to these random jobs that don't actually make any sense in like a real economy. But I think that's what makes it fun is you still have the feelings of someone who is never has roots, never has like a full personhood because they don't have a full-time job.
Wow.
And I think that's a lot of us struggle with that. It's like we're supposed to have this thing that makes us a person. Fulfillment, permanency. And it's like, well, that's a load of garbage because most people can't get it. So anyway, it's a very funny book too. And yes, again, the cover is just like immaculate.
Yeah, that's great because I think a lot of the one of the major themes in my book is sort of this idea of the material conditions that shape the creative process and sort of create a kind of surround around a person that makes something possible or impossible. Yeah, you've really nailed it with these 3 books. I'm very impressed. I don't think I've ever had books that are so on tune before, to be honest. Gifted to me. Thank you.
I agonize over it because I start with like 20 books that could be possible gifts, and then I have to whittle it down, and it's like nearly impossible. But when I thought about the themes of your book that most connect to books that I've read, and that's the other benefit of reading a lot. Like, I'm just like a big reader with no friends in the mountains. You know what I mean? So
you live in the right place.
No, but yeah, you're really going to love these books. And the last one
Exciting.
I wanted to get as a gift for your children.
Oh, wow. And it even has kid wrapping paper so that you don't get them mixed up in your bag.
Exactly. And it's big. So, the kids' books are easier to identify.
Does your City Lights shop have a big kids' book section as well?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. New and used. It's really great.
Wow, cool. Okay, so it's called Seasons by the Lake, Adventures in Greenland. Wow, beautiful. And it has beautiful, I think, pencil crayon illustrations.
Oh, man. The illustrations the story's beautiful. Look at the pictures.
Oh, my gosh.
It's so good.
Oh,
So,
it looks very, very sweet.
And I found out about this book on Instagram because my friend who's the director of the creative writing program at the Institute for American Indian Arts in Santa Fe posted about this. And this author, I think it's Naja Lundaparico. So she lives in Seattle, but she's from Greenland. So indigenous Greenland, moves to Seattle. She's doing the low-res MFA program.
Interesting.
And someone posted about this and I found it and I was like, oh, I'm adding this to the bookstore collection. And then I was just like, I don't know. I think I want to give this to as many people with kids as possible because it's a beautiful story. And low key with the way like Greenland's been painted with Trump and everything. Like, I think this is this is about how I think people misinterpret what Greenland's landscape and weather is like. So it goes through all the seasons and like, look at this. It's just so cool.
Yeah, there's a page here with kids lying down making snow angels below the Aurora Borealis. That sounds great. And it seems like it's structured by seasons, so that's really beautiful. Wow. Thank you so much. These are the most thoughtful books I've ever been gifted.
Well, I'm glad.
Really beautiful.
You deserve
Thank
it.
You. My backpack just got a whole lot heavier.
I'm sorry.
Too bad we're not meeting at my house.
And mine got lighter. I know. Yeah, sorry. Because I was walking over here and I was like sweating so bad, like a 30-minute walk. It's also way warmer. And I'm like, oh, I get to unload these on you.
That's wonderful. No,
So
it's
yeah,
great.
I really hope you enjoy those.
Thank you.
And your children. And I just love spreading the love. And I know how hard it is to write a book. You worked on it for a long time. In fact, the one thing, like it was killing me. It was keeping me up at night. You have an embargo on your thesis from grad school.
Oh.
So I couldn't read the
That's
stories.
probably good.
What is it? The intro specs?
Yeah. I mean, some of them are in here in a very early version.
Right. But I wanted to read them. I
Oh,
was
God.
like,
I'm glad that's not available.
I called
didn't
the
even realize
university
it was
and they're like,
searchable.
oh, come on.
I'm a bit like naive about this kind of stuff. Like, I don't really know how
Well,
those
I'm
things
also
work.
like, I'm dramatic. And I go, like, I've had dissertations from like the 90s sent the book form of it from a library. You know what I mean?
Oh my
like, I go all
gosh.
out. But I was like, oh, I wanted to see these early forms and the ones that didn't make the cut. But I guess it sounds like it's good that I didn't.
Yeah.
For you at least. Because maybe
Well-
you would have been like, oh, no.
Well, it would have been okay. I don't think, well, it was fine. I think what happened is the Introspecs is still a project and title that I'm quite attached to and an idea. I won't go into it in too much detail, but I think basically what happened is it was kind of like that thesis project was like interconnected stories. Some of them were serial chapters and kind of a novel interspersed with these standalone stories that had kind of common themes. It was a bit of a hodgepodge of things though. And so in the end, in the years following grad school, I kind of like detached them. I pulled them apart into two different projects. And so The Longest Way to Eat a Melon is all of the sort of standalone stories that came out of that. And then the other interconnected sort of mini-series stories are kind of, they've been shelved for now and they await further thought. They need some more time.
That makes sense. Look, that's what a thesis is for, you know? You're exploring.
Yeah.
And some good came out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, technically we're here because of that thesis a little bit. You know?
It's true.
So when I was prepping for this, I was like thinking, okay, this is like the story that you read, apart from the brain, no brain, is like clearly something that's been, I don't want to call it an issue, something you've been dealing with for a long time. And as I was reading some of your like poetry and reviews of art shows and all this stuff, there was like a very clear theme that came into focus. Part of it is like food being related to art.
That's so funny.
And how like it's everywhere in your work, which is funny. And then this idea of like having these two selves. And if you don't mind, I'm going to read something. And maybe this is wrong. Maybe my interpretation's off base here, but this just like really hit me when I read it. There's these, like, I don't remember which story it was from. It was about like talking about cute art.
Okay.
Do you remember this? Like it was
Is it a review or
let me read it.
Yeah.
So you said, there's this sense that a work of art should not look or behave too much like the pleasurable things we buy or eat. Because if it does, we risk forgetting what the work is really there to do. But what is it there to do exactly? It is possible that nobody knows, and that in our collectively agreed upon bad taste, this ambivalence about what is nourishing to our survival and what is self-destructive may just be the most defining aspect of our time.
Yeah, that was from a kind of an essay I wrote. I don't know what year at this point, quite a long time ago.
Probably like 7 or 8 years.
For Mousse magazine, I think. And I don't know, I don't even remember all the artists that I was collecting together and thinking about at that time, but I do remember that Instant Coffee was one of them. And they're a Vancouver-based artist collective here that does a lot of sort of like activations and public engagement kind of project, public space projects.
And later in that article, you say, it's true that in my mind, the good critic remains someone dressed in gray burlap, standing solemnly with a pencil and notebook before a famished-looking portrait by Rembrandt. Of course, I know that in real life, critics can be quite fashionable people, that our attire, as it is for many artists I know, has been hopefully updated over the years, from burlap sacks to other, albeit similarly shaped garments bestowed upon us by COS. But the problem for me remains that this sullen intellectual is just as much a part of my body as that other half who likes eating marshmallows and plugging my smartphone into a cord in a plinth just to hear my music blast in public space. So while I may publicly say that I like a certain work of art because, for instance, it speaks to the female experience, or alters our perception of time and space, or models new forms of participation, while all of these things might be absolutely necessary and true, failing to mention just how easy it can be to experience a work of art seems to me to be equally robbing it of something.
That's very interesting. It's very funny to be read back your 10-year-old or 10 years ago voice as well. So there's a bit of naivete that I sense in it that it makes me a bit shy, but yeah.
I totally get it.
But I remember writing those words. Yeah.
But I feel like this, there's a lot in here about that brain, no brain, and really about the project of the longest way to eat a melon, of like, you know, there's these two sides of you that exist. I've never interviewed an art critic, so like that was an interesting thing of looking at how that affects your ability to enjoy or like how you're interpreting art. But I'm wondering if you could talk about how this book, maybe would use a different word than explore, but gets at that feeling for you of like having these two selves in relation to art and writing and the practice of it, and like how that plays into this story collection. Because I feel like even outside of Brain No Brain, it's there.
Yeah, well, I think assembling this book, one of the themes that emerged, which you're right to point out, although I wouldn't have gone back that far, so that's interesting that it was also present then. You know, that was maybe 2015 or something like that.
It was a while.
Or earlier. Yeah. So that's a solid over 10 years ago. Something that emerged as a theme that I did have to very consciously later collect the stories around in order to sort of, you know, knit them together in an interesting way was this idea of that kind of binary or false binary, if you want, between like intellect and affect, or, you know, the conceptual and the emotional, or the sense world on the one hand, and then kind of the dry biscuit world of ideas on the other. And she's not in my stack of books here, but I've often spoken about this in relation to the work of Susan Sontag.
I knew she'd come up.
Yeah, who's also in the epigraph for the collection, because she's another example of someone who's, you know, pulled together these different, the intellectual in her criticism and very sort of rigorous writing, and then also inhabits this other world in her fiction writing. And it's a very odd tension that it produces. Basically, it creates fiction that wants to be really smart. Whether it is or not, I don't know, because, you know, people could debate that. And whether that's even something you want in fiction, I think is a matter of taste. But it creates this kind of like no good fiction on the one hand. And then it creates criticism on the other. In my work, at least, I've experienced this, that wants to be experiential or transportive in like another kind of way that you know, typically isn't found in nonfiction writing, or certainly in like exhibition reviews, or, you know, so there's this desire to kind of merge these two halves of, for me, the making process. I think the other thing that it reminds me of that section that you pulled and read is this whole idea of consumption as being something that seems quite important to me. So, you know, there's the intellect and the affect as being kind of a common thread in the book, but there's also this idea of, you know, how we receive and consume art, how we pursue the making of it, and also how we receive it as audience members, as readers, as the public.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're not wrong that there's a curious thread of food that has like found its way into the works, but it's perhaps because I'm thinking about this idea of what is consumable in a kind of broadly capitalist culture, and the sort of fast pace that we're like moving through artworks and are just sort of fast attention spans, as opposed to kind of the slowness that I'm pursuing, maybe.
You even said in this article earlier, like, of just how, like, it's annoying how easy it is to make food references when you write, to make those, like, you know, symbolic connections, because it just seems like, oh, this could be a cheap thing to do, but it keeps coming up, like, everywhere in your writing, not even just these. I mean, I didn't, like, pull out a ton from every article because, you know, we had to have, like, some, you know, I could have. But it was just like, reading that and thinking about your book, I was just like, oh my gosh. And that play between the intellectual and the affect, I think you even mentioned too, one of the things that's been beautiful about what your work has done to students. They're telling me I can only read like a story a day. And like, I don't want to rush through it. And they're also like a little confused. So like, but it's working their brain in a way that so much is not in their 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old selves, which even for me, I graduated from college in 2013. My whole university life was struggling through the fact that I'm like, God, I'm dumb. because you have to read these long, and I was a history major. It's these texts that are just like, in the process of feeling dumb, I learn. And a lot of students struggle with that. And so this book, like, they light up when they talk about how like challenging it is and smart it is. And at the same time, you're like, you know, do you want something to be so smart that it like makes people's brains hurt? But I personally thought the reason this book stood out among a ton of good books I read last year is because I still am not really sure what to tell people about it. And that is the bookseller's challenge, is like, what do I say about this book to get someone to buy it? But part of it too is showing them what the book looks like, how the chapters are, how you start scribbling and making weird symbols toward the back end of the book, how things are broken down in lists. And so it's like, yeah, there was something there about all of this. And then even speaking of, there was one review that I found on some random website from a young woman that said this, and it relates. That was so delicious, but also can send you into a psychotic episode if you're not careful.
Was this on like Goodreads or something like that?
No, I don't even. It was
I forget which one. I recognize the line, but I don't know.
Maybe it was on Goodreads, but it reminded me of Marjorie Kemp a lot and how it flowed over me. I'll definitely come back to it at some point and see what gives then. It's her first book. A little insane, honestly. Made me want to write more, which will eventually depress me when I can't replicate its succinctness. But for me, for now, it is the mark of a very good book. Or at least a book that made me go insane the appropriate amount, in parentheses, loads. Kudos. Release it in the UK, baby, please. I need to be irritating to my friends about it.
This is definitely not a formal review. But yeah, great.
But I think there's something to that.
Yeah.
Is like, you know, your book is like a little maddening and wild and sets you into a frenzy. But at the same time, you're going to go back to it. And you're going to stew on it for a long, like there's just so much in there. So I think it's given readers that balance between what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I will add that it's also deeply meaningful to me that you picked out the excerpt for me to read that you did, because Brain No Brain, but since we're on this topic, I think is one of the stories in the collection that I fought to keep in. And for me, it's like the heart of the collection. It's the real crux. It's maybe the most vulnerable piece and because it was something that originally wasn't written in the second person. And then in the revision process, in my fighting to keep it in the collection, I flipped it to a first person narrator. And it immediately did this other thing to the piece that connected it to other pieces in the collection that are also first person. And did this very interesting. There was an interesting way that it immediately connected it to these other themes about introspection, because you mentioned the Introspex project that I was working on in the past and maybe still am in the back of my mind and life. But Brain No Brain, it is like maybe one of the more kind of close to me pieces, and the one that people may or may not recognize this when they read it. But for me, it is the most sort of risk-taking work in the book for the ways that it kind of reveals things about me that are coded in different ways and that I recognize when I revisit them on the page. And so I think that's very important. There's an amazing writer, Jess Arndt, who worked with me on an early manuscript of the book along its long journey to publication. And something they said that I'll never forget is, in working on this collection, refining it, really make sure that there's something in there that speaks to you in this moment, so that when you revisit it later, you'll recognize that version of yourself. So even if it's not, I'm paraphrasing, so it's not as succinct as Jess would have put it. So it's like, where are all the little tiny moments where you are speaking to yourself, to your future self, in public or in private, and to sort of use those as cues to mark your path along the way. And so when you're thinking about these kinds of there's a lot of sort of existential questions that I feel out in that Brain No Brain story. And so I that was basically something I was thinking about the whole time, is where are the little private things that I'm saying to myself in this piece?
I think that's really good advice. And I'm glad you fought for it, because to be honest, even as a reader, I'd never met you, but there was pretty much no way that there was any other story that mattered as much. Like, that felt apparent. I wouldn't be able to say because of, I didn't know that was the case on the other end. But I think there's something to it where, like, people can feel how a piece matters more than others. I just kept coming back to it. And then, like, I was trying to pick other things for you to possibly read, and I was like, impossible. I mean, you could, but it wouldn't matter as much. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious, though, like, when you're fighting for it to stay in, I mean, like, if you could say, like, what would have been lost, do you think, if it wasn't in there?
For me, that piece is important because it speaks directly to the stakes that I personally feel in writing and in life and in writing as life. And so, I mean, we'll talk about, there's one book in my stack of books that I brought for you as well that connects to that idea and that I was reading at the time of writing Brain No Brain. But yeah, for me, it's really a question of stakes. And so that would have been lost if there wasn't sort of a more direct and transparent kind of risky way that I stated those stakes for me, however surreal they might be received in language or on the page. That's as literal as it gets basically in my mind in terms of like why I'm writing and what it means to me to continue.
Yeah, it felt like my English professor at Michigan used to call things a kairotic moment. I loved that word. I'm still not necessarily sure I could define it, but you know it when you read it. Like we'd be talking about a novel. It's like this kairotic moment. And I'm like, I guess kairos, like I went on a religious retreat called kairos when I was in Catholic school. But it's standout. It's standalone. And so that's what like made it so special is even in the midst of all of those amazing stories. I mean, like I said, it's my favorite book, but my favorite story is just like right in there and you know it when you feel it.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
And I'm curious, like, would you want to start with that book because of the connection to Brain No Brain?
Yeah,
because I feel like it's the crux of everything for me.
Yeah.
So you can go ahead and bring it out.
Well, one of the books is Hélène Sgsmås, I think is the correct pronunciation. It's a book from 1990 called 3 Steps on the Ladder of Writing. Okay, so the backstory is this book was recommended to me by a writer, Ralph Pritchard, who I was living with for a month on a residency in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We were on a kind of an art writing residency with Chris Crouse, actually, at Plug-in Contemporary Art Space in Winnipeg. And I was working actually on an early draft of Brain No Brain. It was going terribly. I think I'd shared a version with the group and it was just like so vulnerable. I just like felt like it was oversharing and immediately wished I hadn't because it was quite a big group and it wasn't terribly personal, like the way that the residency was kind of formatted. It wasn't that intimate or close knit of a group. And and then I just shared this piece that was perhaps like way too vulnerable or way more vulnerable than anything anybody else was like sharing.
You're like, oh man,
and
I
immediately
need to disappear.
felt confused and sad. Yeah, and at the time, I think this was in 2017 and I was mid-grad school. So I was in my MFA program at that point. So I was solidly writing at that point. But I was working on an early draft of Brain No Brain and just couldn't figure out why. You know, I thought it was a very funny story that I was writing, and I shared it in the spirit of thinking it was very humorous and lighthearted. And Ralph immediately said, like, whoa, that was very dark. Like, that was a lot. Like, I'm surprised you shared that.
No.
And then I was so confused that it was received that way that I just couldn't reconcile it because I'd never actually shared it before, and so I'd never had any outside readers of this piece before, and it was very much in progress. It wasn't entirely similar to the version that is in the book in the end, but it did have the same sort of vignettes of, these sort of more essayistic sections interspersed with like these vignettes of the character Brain and No Brain kind of interacting and doing silly things together. So I thought it was just a very silly story, and that is not how it was received. So it sent me in spiraling into this kind of existential question of like, what am I doing in my writing and why?
Talk about like, that's disorienting. I mean, you lose all ground to stand on.
It was a weird experience, yeah. And also funny because Chris Crouse was there, who at the time particularly I was so in admiration of, kind of superstar. And then I was like, oh my God, what have I shared with Chris Crouse?
Oh no.
But it was fine in the end. It was just a very vulnerable moment. And Ralph was just so thoughtful and at the time shared with me this book, 3 Steps on the Ladder of Writing. And, there's lots of things in it. Basically, it's structured. I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but I think it's published as a selection of lectures originally that were given. But there's 3 sections to this book. The first is the School of the Dead. The second section is the School of Dreams, and the last is the School of Roots. And so she talks in this about, what makes great writing and the kind of stakes that can be found in the kind of great writing. And she uses, so it's literary criticism, basically, this book, but has a lot of sort of instructions for writers as well that are navigating these things. In this collection, she's talking a lot about her favorite people, of course, which are like Thomas Bernhard, Clarice Lispector, Dostoevsky, and Kafka.
There are a few others, I think. So they're essays, and she draws on examples from their work over and over. But in particular, the thing that I really connected to, I don't remember everything about this collection, but the thing I connected to was very particularly in the first section, The School of the Dead. She's talking basically about, great writing needs to die in order to be reborn. I don't know, to some extent, it's literal as well. You need to die in order to be reborn in writing or as yourself. Yeah. So some of it's literal, some of it's metaphorical, speaking about life or writing or both. But the line that really stuck to me, which, could easily be the epigraph to my past or future books, is the writers I love are descenders. Where's the rest of this line? Explorers of the lowest and the deepest, I think, I want to say is the rest. Let me find the whole quote because I think it connects to what you're talking about if it's not too long.
Yeah, feel free to read it all.
Yeah. All these people, she's talking about the people she loves. So this is Lispector and Bernhard and Tsvetlana. She says, all these people frequented the same ladder. To us, this ladder has a descending movement because the ascent, which evokes effort and difficulty, is toward the bottom. I say ascent downward because we ordinarily believe the descent is easy. The writers I love are descenders, explorers of the lowest and deepest. So this goes on, but this is something, it's at the very beginning of the book, actually. It's on page 5, right? So that is just something, the writers I love are descenders. So this is something I was thinking about. Okay, so when you're writing and sharing very vulnerable work that is really getting to the crux of the kind of writing stakes that you're trying to solve for yourself, this idea of descent is the key for me. So I keep returning to this idea as okay, if I'm not descending in the way that is vulnerable and doing then, I'm not actually doing the writing. And so in assembling The Longest Way to Eat a Melon, in the very sort of fine-grained comb of it that I did through years of revision, including of Brain No Brain, I was really working with this. This was my standard, basically. The criteria for the works is that and one of the lines that was in the back of my head the whole time is the writers I love are descenders, explorers of the lowest and the deepest. So how can we make each and every sentence in this whole collection feel like it carries those stakes and that kind of importance? So nothing is there by accident. Nothing is taken for granted, even at the word level, actually, I would say, as sort of ridiculous as that sounds. It's very tiring for me to write this way, but it is true of my process.
I could imagine.
So I really tried to imagine how I could descend in this way that Skszwx describes with each piece.
That's so exciting to learn about.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit.
It helps me make sense of it too. Because I know you've talked about how you're much more interested in the sentence than you are the story, which is evident if anybody reads this, because it's not really about what's the narrative here. You're not telling a typical arc of it. You are exploring things literally, it feels like every single word. And that's satisfying for a reader to read when even books I love kind of just flow and there's a story and something's leading to something, and yours, nothing is leading to anything. It is so meticulous at that. I think, let me put it in layman's terms for myself so I don't go off the rails here. The seriousness in which you took each sentence was what made this really special. And even if it was laborious for you, and on the other side, you can't just zoom through this. Because it would be a literal waste of time to pretend like this is a book that you can just I'm just going to read as if it's anything else. Because I think you miss the point, which is to connect as deeply with you, on that depth, that level. I think the reader has to descend. That's what, maybe that's why you like those writers. I think it's a rare, special experience. But I never had that language. It makes sense that holds this whole thing together.
It's a bit metaphysical.
Yeah, it is.
It presents as maybe, these kind of this playful exercise in craft or something, the sentence stuff. But then there's also, the sort of metaphysical question below why I'm doing that, I think.
What is it like it's like the hum of the hum of everything underneath. No one could possibly ever know your descent. But I'd say in terms of helping people understand where your book comes from, I think that's a helpful thing for people to know that that's the question. Because I think maybe someone could read this and be like, what is the question that's driving this? What are the stakes? Yeah. And if you take everything under that like with that in mind, it's very clear.
Yeah.
Especially with Brain No Brain.
Yeah, exactly. I think it connects specifically to that story, and other ones, deal with it in different ways. But yeah.
So this book was given to you, and how did it change? Is this the one that you started then reorienting or changing Brain No Brain right after you read this, so that it didn't come off the way? Like, how did it change the structure of what you were doing with that?
That's a good question. It was years of revision after the point of starting to think about these 3 steps on the ladder of writing. So I can't say for certain, but I do remember it and feel fondly towards that moment of being gifted this book, because it was the first time I was actually challenged to think about the stakes of my writing. Like, I think up to that point, I was really midway. I was 1 year in a 2-year program, midway through an MFA at the University of Guelph in writing. And I was just, I don't know, like I was very lucky. I had funding, scholarships and grant funding to be there. So I was treating writing as my full-time job. And I was just like having this, it sounds very nice to me now. It's like almost unbelievable. But I was going to a cafe every day and writing from 9 to 5. And
like, man, I kind of wish there were no stakes.
Yeah. But I was treating it like a job, and I was producing possibly the worst writing of my life, because it was just volume, but it wasn't really doing the things I wanted to do, or I was moving at the wrong pace or something like that, and with the wrong questions in my mind. So it was a turning point in the sense, maybe a very slow one from that point forward, but it was a turning point in the sense that it was the first time someone had really called me to account and been like, okay, you're doing something here that you yourself don't know what its effects are.
Wow.
You clearly aren't. You're not fully aware. You think it's a comedy. It's not a comedy. Or and so it's like, okay, so I really had to back up and think about what I was doing and why, with a lot more intentionality from that point forward. So
wow, what a moment.
Yeah.
And what a gift. I mean, a mortifying experience, sort of like a disorienting experience turns into the direction, the thing that helps you find what your
And I think
reasons
it took years later, really, maybe quite recently, as recently as maybe 2 years ago or something, for me to really understand that this idea of the creative process could be an organizing principle for all of my work, actually. And the collection, of course, is a useful container as well. So it kind of set me on this other path of not just writing random fiction in areas that I had no real knowledge of, or plodding along. But it sent me on this path of another kind of fiction writing that was connected to these sort of deeper existential questions, or kind of the question of writing itself as craft and project. Yeah,
that's so incredible to learn about. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like a lot of writers have those sorts of turning points, and they rarely are. Oh, here's the turning point, and now I've fully turned, and I'm like ready to go. It just takes a minute, but that's the thing about those people in your life that do that. It's like, do you want to do it? Is it easier to do it that way? No, but it's like, God, I know they're right, and it almost feels like honoring that honesty and someone being willing to say that and help you. If you didn't, it's like you're forsaking this person,
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like a nod to them to say thank you, like I did it, that was. Yeah, important. So I love that. Oh, what a great first one. What's number 2?
We can go to this one, Eileen Myles, The Importance of Being Iceland, Travel Essays and Art. Do you know this book?
No, but I was eyeing it because...
You saw the spine, right? When I put it on the table.
Yeah, I was like, I need to know about this.
Obviously, just love Eileen Myles. Let's see. This book is from 2009. Yeah, 2009, published by Semiotext. So it connects, actually. So Semiotext is, of course, Chris Gross's press.
Yeah.
But Eileen Myles, okay, so this was maybe my gateway drug into writing, actually, because I was introduced to this by my prof in my undergraduate visual art studio program here in Vancouver, Alison Clay. And I was doing a lot of performance art, painting, I don't know, whatever I was doing in my undergrad. I thought I was really going to do art. That was my thing. But mainly I just had a lot of sort of creative energy, and I didn't quite know where to place it. Wasn't at all writing at that time yet, but she introduced me to this book specifically. I had read Eileen Myles before, but this book specifically as a form of art criticism. And it opened my eyes to ways of writing that I hadn't maybe connected before, and gave me a new kind of permission to write, because okay, so I was in a visual art program. I'd maybe started dabbling in art writing in the sense of reviews of different
exhibitions, and maybe I'd done, I don't know what I'd done, an interview or two or something. Anyways, I was versed in this other realm, right? This other discipline. And so art writing is one of the things that you do. It's like the type of writing that you engage with in the visual arts, and it takes a lot of different forms. But this was maybe the first time that I'd read something that immediately transported me into another register that was like a conversational register. It's a very casual, often very funny, but direct book in Eileen's classic style.
Yeah.
That kind of intimacy just was something I'd never encountered. And it really brought in like a new level of craft and kind of casualness to the idea of writing about art that connected to writing generally as well.
Instead of like the heavy-handed intellectual burlap sack type of
Yeah, that's true. Actually, it connects to that piece that you pulled from. Yeah, it was enjoyable. It's consumable, actually. So it's travel, essays, and art, and it has these different sections that are, so there's Iceland. It's basically Eileen travels to Iceland and is traveling around Iceland on some kind of residency or something like that, and is basically talking about the topography and of this island and the wayfinding around it, the history of it, etc., as a visitor. And so it has this kind of frame of like visiting an island and kind of that meandering sort of circumnavigation that is happening around the geographical circle of an island. And then it has all these other sections: art essays, people, talks, travel, body, moving pictures, and blogs.
Wow.
And so those are the sections. And some of them, often they're just like, one of the talk section is Everyday Barf. Another one's a speech about Alan. I'm assuming that's Allen Ginsberg. I don't know. I forget. The poems of Jimmy Schuyler, On the Road with Bjork. There's a very casual kind of way in which often she's talking about artists or musicians or people, writers. And it's a type of criticism, but she's introducing them often just on a first name basis. And so there's like this kind of familiarity that's very accessible. And it's surprising and charming and a pleasure.
And
to
you
read.
hadn't considered that you could write this way before about the things that you would theoretically want to write about.
Exactly.
Which kind of causes, I think, when you overanalyze or intellectualize something, even I think about the worst rap songs I've ever written. I just started getting into my friend, my producer calls it alphabet rap, where I'm just like thinking of words that are big and interesting and how they all rhyme. And then I get to the end and I'm like, what the fuck is this even about? This is honestly, I have some songs from that summer in Spokane because I was like going to see my favorite rapper. I was like, I need to level up my game, we didn't even talk about rap really. That's what's funny. But it was like I think sometimes when then you listen to certain people make music, you're like, oh, I can let go of that. Like there's meaning in things that are like fun. And you actually don't even need to say that many words sometimes. You could just let it you could have these breaths in between. It's like, oh yeah, I think we all need that to help us find our own voice. Because sometimes, I don't know, in your undergrad, did you read art criticism that did feel like it was just in a bog, Yeah,
it was often very historical, it was from the 60s or something, or it was very serious kind of criticism and attached to movements and artworks that, are now canonized. They're not, ones that I encounter on the sidewalk or something like that. And they're not people, sometimes they weren't people that are even alive anymore. So they're certainly not your road trip buddies in the way that Eileen is describing in this book. Yeah, I think it's very important to connect to ways. It introduces this idea that you can be a participant as a receiver and audience member of a work of art, whatever medium, you can be a participant in that conversation.
Yeah, that's important. I think because when I used to look at even how journalists are or documentary filmmakers, there's a lot of, I think the ways in which we've seen being behind the lens versus actually being a person who just happens to be holding the camera. My friend in West Virginia, I got to send you her stuff. She talks about how the struggle of this now is the way in which social media, people are filming themselves and what they do all the time anyway. And so it used to be actually easier to drop into this place and make a film about. She's from West Virginia. It should be easy to connect with these people. But even the idea that you should have attachments to folks, it should feel friendly. If you want to get people to talk about themselves, or my journalist friend that wrote this book about professional wrestling in rural North Georgia. She followed a son and a dad, and the son wants to become a professional wrestler, and she just drops into this place she has no connection to, but part of how you get people to talk is you share of yourself. And I think it was actually at one point, one of the wrestlers had said, this is our way of working out who we are in the world and just the world in general. And like writing is your way of doing that. So we're doing this together now. So it's like, you don't have to separate yourself. Like that actually makes it much like worse and harder. So anyway, I don't know. That just reminded me of like, you can just drop into a place and it become familiar. Like some of my favorite books are someone moving like to the Mississippi Delta. And then all of a sudden they're writing about all these people just because they know him. He's there. It's not just someone coming in and then flying back to New York. You know what I mean? So anyway.
Well, that's the interesting, I think that was kind of an epiphany for me as a very young, I was probably in my early 20s at this point. I think I read this right when it was coming out. It's 2009. And this is collecting essays of Eileen Myles over like a 20-year period or something. I'll mention that. So they were written for a lot of different, in a lot of different contexts and on different invitations to things for response. But yeah, I think it was the first time I really encountered a version of so-called criticism where the critic, if you even want to formalize in that way, it's even a kind of a weird term, but where the critic's voice was just as present as the artwork, and you really understand how their version of what they're telling is highly subjective, and that voice is like is equal to the voice of the artist or the musician or the thing that they're responding to, and that is a very gracious, open thing if you can kind of enter that, especially as a young person involved in the arts or writing, and have permission to just, bring your own voice and worldview into something that you're seeing and tell it.
Yeah. Man, I realize this has kind of become a theme with some of the people I've interviewed of having these moments. Like even my last interview, she talked about this particular writer, Susan Orlean, talking about just enough of yourself. You can't remove yourself. You don't want to dominate, but literally this is not worth it if you don't have that, if you're not in it. And how for a young journalist, that was important. Because then otherwise, what are we doing here, That just kind of hit me that I've had this conversation several times.
Well, that's exactly it. It's like at this time I wasn't writing fiction. I was had before, once dabbled in poetry or something, but I wasn't really writing anything. Like I wasn't really doing creative writing, but I was, because of my field in visual arts, I was sort of like, okay, well, I'm a good enough writer, and so I can write about art or whatever. Yeah. And those opportunities, it's very different because you can pitch pieces, right, to even your local blog or whatever, and because it's a reportage kind of relationship is very different from pitching like a short story or a poem that you've written in a magazine. So it's very, very different. So in a way, it gave me access to that kind of writing, a different kind of writing. And so, long before I was writing fiction, I was reading this book and thinking, oh, okay, well, I can write art criticism or this version of it, but I can start to bring more and more of my voice into it. And that's when it started to be this bridge into, what later was full-on fiction.
That's wild.
Yeah.
To think about you're finding your fiction voice through. Because otherwise, if you're not in it, then you wouldn't have had a chance to start even working out these questions or themes that eventually came into your fit. Like that's wild. Wow. That's an important book.
Yeah. I don't know if we have time, but I thought I could share this one little section that I've returned to. It's called About Martha Diamond. It's from 1990.
We definitely do. Yes.
Martha Diamond, the painter. So this is Eileen's, I don't know, review. I guess it's a review. But just to give you a sense, it's the very first part of the very first page that I've returned to and brought to some writing workshops in the past. It says, one morning I had breakfast with friends of mine, poets who also write about art. We all got heated and animated pretty quickly, switching the topic constantly, but from whether we could handle another cup of coffee without blowing up back to how awkward it feels to write about another artist without being able to respond as an artist to their art. Let's face it, they're hiring writers, not poets. A poet I know, James Schuyler, told me about writing a catalog in which he was specifically invited to write poems in response to the work in question. He did it cautiously, one of our great poets who's written about art for the greater part of his life, finally responding in his original medium to the art in question. He said he always writes in poems initially, but then, quote, turns it into prose. It's an act of translation, it seems to me. That initial response, the poet's notes, are an independent work of art, an act of perception. The poet as camera, recording his or her own responses to an art object without going the next step and flattening the response into conventional prose. It's actually a terrible sacrifice the art world demands of poets, the virgins thrown into the volcano, so that the shiny painting and sculpture of their time will have its equivalent in print, sort of.
anyways, it goes on.
Oh my gosh,
so you can see,
that's so real. Wow.
Yeah, I just love that one. This is one of the pieces in here I often return to because it speaks to the idea of whatever art writing is. I don't know. We don't necessarily need to get into that. But, you know, the sort of the hierarchy of art forms as well and different types of even within writing.
Yeah.
Art writing as opposed to poetry, as opposed to writing that is in the service to other art forms. There's something interesting here.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot in just the paragraph there. I mean, like, yeah, we could have a total detour here. Because I also know you've written some poems in response to art.
Yeah, tried.
Like,
yeah.
So,
you know.
So modest.
Not with the same rigor, but yeah.
But yeah, so it's like, oh gosh, I understand how that could be like opening up a total new world for how you see yourself in the art world. And, you know, then the long line to the longest way to eat a melon. I mean, it all connects. That's beautiful. I love that. And I've been to Iceland. My brother got married there. And so I have like just a deep love for that landscape. And it's like punishing.
Hard not to love it. Yeah.
It's like a melancholy there that's like unbearably beautiful. I felt like sometimes I think it was a dream. It's so unlike any place I've been, and it's so empty. And then you just go home and you're like, wow, I can't believe that place exists. It's magical. So that's like a cool project to be able to do.
Yeah, look at even the color of this book. It's like a mint green. It's like the color of a glacier. It's a very kind of interesting way to collect. I mean, it's an interesting example of how to collect fragments of works over a long period of time. And put it into together. A collection too. Yeah.
That's a good, good for you to help how to do it with your stories as well.
Yeah, that's true.
What's number 3?
Okay, so The Story of My Teeth by Valeria Luiselli. Oops, there we go. It flew out of my hands. Has a bunch of teeth with big roots on the cover.
I love that cover.
This is a good segue maybe because this book, also curiously, one I was reading in Winnipeg that summer of the Brain No Brain crisis.
Big summer.
Yeah, it was a big summer, I guess, for me. It was a turning point in ways that I didn't realize until just now. But I love this book. I think it's so funny. I'd read Luiselli's work before. I think before this point, maybe she'd written an essay collection and a novel, Faces in the Crowd and Sidewalks, I believe it's called. Beautiful in their own ways. But this story was really unique in that it's very, very odd. The backstory is almost as interesting as the novel itself.
Oh, I love when that happens.
Do you know this book?
No, I've never read any of her work.
So yeah, the backstory is basically she was commissioned to write an exhibition text responding to, I believe, a collection of artworks at the Xʷməthkվəy collection in Mexico City. And she decided to take it upon herself to write a serial novel in collaboration with the workers at a juice factory. X၀məthkվəy, of course, is a major juice company brand. Juice brand, yeah. Juice brand. X၀məthkվəy. And so the company of the juice brand, of course, so has this art collection for which there's a major sort of very fancy gallery in Mexico City that houses this collection. Sometimes this happens, I guess, big companies have art collections or galleries as well. I guess it's a thing. So anyway, so she went not to the gallery, but she went to the juice factory of X၀məthkվəy, the other side, and wrote this kind of wacky fiction story in segments. And she would write the first chapter and then she would share it with the workers of the factory. There was some kind of test group that it was shared with, and they would, I don't know if she was there in person. I think this was done remotely. Maybe someone was assisting her. They would record their feedback to the story, the first installment of the story. She would take that feedback and then she would continue writing the next section. And so it evolves in this very odd way. The story of the teeth at the center of this is like hard to even understand, like why. It's basically a novel about an auctioneer who's auctioning real and imaginary famous teeth off for some unimaginable sum of money. And then it goes in these very sort of circular directions. And of course, it was written in Spanish and has been translated by Christina McSweeney. And there's even a section, I think, in the final part, it's basically trying to bring translation. The act of translation is another sort of very circuitous element of creative production. Yeah. And so the final chapter in this English translation, the final chapter, the translator herself has contributed a timeline, basically charting off like all of the imaginary, the stated or unstated background, I don't know, background lives of all the major and minor characters that come up in the novel. So it's a very odd book. I think if I were to sum up what it was about, I'm really terrible at this, but I think I've seen it written and I've, slowly over time adopted this. Oh yeah, it even says this on the back cover. Combining the industrial suburbs of Mexico City and Louise Zelli's own literary influences to produce a meditation on, as Highway says, Highway is the name of the main character, the variable value of art.
Wow.
Very odd book. I don't know what else to say about it, but what I think it does connect to that I mentioned in relation to Eileen Myles as well is the idea of it was sort of the beginning of me getting into the kind of more surreal aspects of writing, more and more fiction at this point, but trying to still write about art. I use quotations around the about there. And looking for examples in contemporary literature, mostly fiction at this point, that were doing that, writing about art in a tangential way. At this time, I would say I was also reading a lot of Chris Crouse. That summer, of course, I was on this residency in 2017. I was also reading Ben Lerner, of course, at the time. So thinking about autofiction and just kind of how to write about the weird sort of privilege, but also madness of art making and how it interacts with capital or different constellations of things in the world, material conditions again.
Your book made me realize I have not read a lot about people writing fiction about writing and art. It's not something
it's niche for sure.
But also then it's how many examples really could you find? But you need them to figure out how to do that. Because I feel like writers left to the question of which direction I'd go with my writing likely wouldn't choose the way you went with the type of writing about the meditations
the writing
on
about
creating.
The writing about? Right.
Writing about there, you could go, it's like a spiral that's getting smaller and smaller, And I think that's what just got me so excited to the point that I was like, hey, Jordan, want me to come take a trip to Portland so I can actually go interview this writer? I still want to see you, you're my friend. But because, again, it was a jolt to the system. I was like, whoa, this is exciting. And then I'm like, where have I been? There has to be other people that have done this, right? Maybe not as well. I don't know. But this makes a lot of sense now, understanding where the backstory, that's crazy.
It's a very odd, I think people may hate this book. Or if you're a real deep cuts person like me, you'll love it. But it has a real made-upness to it that could only be produced in that kind of chaotic arrangement, which is that it's being written for something in a very weird way. It doesn't just exist on its own. It has this kind of strange backstory and sort of craft history. So, whatever it's doing is producing in me the same feeling that I had producing my own collection.
Hey, that's good.
Which is that it's you're pulling from life in these sort of different ways, and then you're stringing it together in a way that produces these kind of disassociative junctures or twists with each piece, which hopefully, my goal at least, and I feel this as well in the story of my teeth, is it's creating ideally a kind of disco ball effect where you're sort of moving kaleidoscopically around a central theme or something, but moving through a lot of different voices and points of view.
I like that.
Orbiting something. And they're kind of incongruous chapters, or stories or whatever it is. But in her case, it was quite interesting that she kind of used this. It really is an experiment in form and voice. And for me, was the first time I'd read something that really, had this sort of intellectual backstory to it, a why it exists thing that, of course, is very interesting, as we've discussed. But it was also doing this thing where it was really trying to leap off from that backstory into just the world of suspended fiction.
Yeah.
And that was very fun for me to read.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
What another huge moment it feels like.
Yeah, it has also at the center of the story is a very kind of unlikable character. His name is Gustavo Sanchez, I believe, and people call him Highway, is how he introduces himself. And he's kind of the classic unreliable narrator, basically, but also very unlikable. So that you follow this person along, and then the other chapters kind of look at him from the perspective of other characters around him and things. But he ultimately is very charismatic. And so you're examining the life of this very charismatic character who happens to be an auctioneer. Whether that is real or not is revealed at the end in some kind of delusional further chapter. But yeah, I love the idea that you can kind of examine the charisma of a character and their ability. I mean, the whole idea of like, how well can this character highway tell a story? And then, when you look at that in fiction, you start to look at the whole construction of this novel as well. So it's meta in that way, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
This feels like exactly why I came here.
It's a bit convoluted.
This book. Yeah, exactly. I love it.
Yeah.
I don't think any other person I've interviewed could have, like, this is a new experience for me. I love it.
God.
Like, it's so good.
Purposely convoluted. Yeah.
Yes, please. Like, confuse me. Drive me mad. Like, drive me a little bit insane. But like up to the edge,
Good.
Like this is just like, it's thrilling to me because I love disjointed anything or things that feel disjointed but actually do have like the center. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, anybody that criticizes like a tangential book, I'm like, but you realize all of them were like very purposeful tangents, no matter how long they went on. But it's also because, like, I don't know if it's because I have Tourette syndrome and my Tourettic brain just goes fucking 77 places in a minute and then it all makes sense to me, That's a possibility that I think I've realized, like, why I like certain art that feels as chaotic as my brain does.
That's actually not the first time someone has said that to me about my work, actually.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it kind of nourished something in me that I can't get from straightforwardness. And that's why, like, I am all in on reading this book because I mean, the backstory is incredible, but like, I think there's something where I can't, it actually stresses me out to read something that's too straightforward.
Mm-hmm. For me, I feel the same way, although literalness is like another thing I'm a little bit allergic to.
Yeah. It's the idea of like, I mean, even when I speak, sometimes people are like, but what do you, like, what are you saying? I'm like, I'm saying what I'm saying. Are you listening? It's just like people want something to be just, this is what it is, but never is what it is. I hate that term. Everything's everything. I don't know. Like, this is how I feel about it.
And the more you read, the more that confuses and confounds.
Yeah. So it's like, but yeah, this is like getting to the crux of, I think, my connection to your work. The chaos is soothing to me. And feels like it's very much in stream with how I am when I'm just sitting there.
Mm-hmm. And it connects to the brain, no brain thing we were discussing. But the chaos too, I wanted to say, maybe this is another good segue, is the chaos is something I feel very tender towards on the one hand, so I'm holding it in this one basket on the left, but on the right, I'm also holding this idea of the fable as a kind of as an elegant solution to falsely containing the chaos. So that's a bit more wordy than I really mean it to be.
No, I know what you mean, though.
So the story of my teeth was maybe sort of the beginning of me starting to become I was reading a lot of magic realism at that time too. So that's, a whole other conversation. And it's been a long time since I revisited a lot of those classics. But I was starting to think at this time already about the sort of emergence of this fable as form and the possibilities this presented for, if I was interested in getting at all these kind of really intellectual topics, there was something so seductive about the idea of using the fable and fabulist writing in general as a container to hold all of those things in a kind of sweetly simple package.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why you'll love Under Major Domo Minor.
Yes, I can't wait to read it.
Because I'm like, what is going on? There's so much, but like, it's technically here. Like in this story.
Read it. Yeah, and you can read it at face value or you can read it otherwise. Mm-hmm. And that is, those parallel types of reading I think are very important.
I agree.
So connecting further then to this idea of the fable, I brought Sheila Heti's Pure Color, maybe the best book cover ever, green blob.
I know it is.
One of my favorites. I think I might have given the cover of this book as like a design sample when they were designing to the designer when
that tracks. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's cool.
I mean, you ended up with a great cover.
Yeah. Similar font actually. I'm just noticing.
Oh yeah.
But Sheila Heti, I thought it was important to bring a couple of local or Canadian connections into our conversation. So the last three are sort of closer to home.
I appreciate that.
But yeah, Pure Color. I mean, I don't know. Sheila Heti seems to be like someone who's like kind of a polarizing author in some way or another. I think some people find her too deceptively simple. Like she's very plain language. For me, I love it. But Pure Color, a novel, is maybe my favorite of her work. I mean, there's a lot of ways in which it connects, and there's a lot of reasons I can understand why I would naturally gravitate towards it. But it has this it's basically a fable about the world, you know, and this kind of question, this very provocative question. I think it opens right even on the first page of, you know, what if the world as we know it was just God's bad first draft? And then it goes on to kind of unfold in this sort of metaphorical realm of, you know, everything is like, you know, it's a novel in the sense that it has characters and there's a love story at the heart of it. And there's, you know, there's death, love and death, but there's also sort of these other layers of philosophical questions that run parallel to it. And so, yeah, the whole provocation around the book is what happens then if what unfolds from here on is, you know, God gathering feedback for the second draft, the better first draft of everything we know. And in order to do that, he's assigned 3 different types of critics in the world. It's interesting. Criticism is coming up in this a lot. I wasn't expecting that necessarily, but I guess it's in the back of my mind and influences. But in Pure Color, there are 3 types of critics in the world that are introduced in this kind of meta-narrative that is setting up the novel to come. And they are birds, fishes, and bears. Birds are kind of, as I am trying to remember, I had to revisit it because I could basically almost not remember what the book was about. It was so kind of immersive and weird, which is true of all of the books that I've chosen today. They needed revisiting.
Yours needed revisiting for me too.
Exactly.
I've read it 3 times.
What even happened? We don't know. But yeah, so in it, the setup is that the birds are kind of, they represent the critics that are, you know, that stand-ins for all that is aesthetic and beautiful in the world, but they critique the world from up high, and with a loftiness and kind of maybe a detachment from the everyday realities. The fishes are swimming in the midst of all the chaos. They're humanists, and they're kind of, you know, close to social issues, and they're the social justice fighters of the world that feel things very deeply. And the bears, I think, are just the kind of loyal familial attachment people. And so then the novel plays out with 2 characters, Annie and Mira, I believe it is. One of them is a fish, one of them's a bird. And then there's the death of, I think it's Mira's father, who identifies as a bear. And then Mira is sucked up into the form of a green leaf, and then watches the rest of the novel unfold from her position on a branch overlooking the world. So it's a very kind of
oh man, that's amazing.
The influence of Zen Buddhism is very present in this work. I am not an expert in this area, so I can't speak to all of that, but there is something deeply, again, that existential current runs like, you know, like an elastic band underneath the whole thing. And you can read it at face value, and it's deceptively simple in its language, you know. And quite beautiful. So I love the kind of mind trick that plays.
You know, this is just reminding me. So I almost got you my friend Ashley Bryant Phillips, her short story collection, Sleepovers. It's the best Southern, for sure, short story collection of the century. Maybe completely. I mean, I have a weird thing. A lot of my staff picks for short stories, they're green and yellow. Like Ashley's book is like a lime green with yellow hair on a person. The reason I'm thinking about this is in her Books on the Bed episode, she reads from Bambi, the translation of Bambi, and she picks a passage that are leaves talking to each other. When she stopped reading it, her first question was, "Isn't that everything?" And then I was like, "Yeah." But it was like the most simple dialogue between these leaves that are on these branches about, and then like, even like looking forward to like when they're going to fall off. Right?
right.
In terms of their death, but it was one of the most punishingly beautiful things I've ever heard somebody read on this podcast. But it was just like, how did that do that to me? And like, how is it that leaves just captured life in like 4 paragraphs? Like, it was very bizarre. So as you were talking about this, I was like, ooh, that just kind of reminded me of that. Like, how?
Well, and I've heard interviews with Sheila Heti. I remember this book coming out. It's from 2022, so semi-recent. And I remember hearing an interview with her where she was talking about how basically she wrote this book in the immediate aftermath of her own father's death. And so grief is like a real a real theme in it. It's basically the motivating force that's pulling it all together.
Yeah.
But she says in this interview that I heard that she didn't even remember writing the book, actually. It just came out. It spilled forth in the form that it did, in that kind of metaphysical space of grief and dealing with the kind of surreality of that experience of experiencing someone very close to you, the bear, perhaps. And the loss of that person and then walking around in the world with that fresh loss and not quite understanding the role of anything or, seeing everything newly. Yeah. It's very simple and very beautiful. And I think lots of people maybe don't connect to, not lots, but some people, I think you either like Sheila Heti's writing style or you don't, I think, because of its sort of plainness. But for me, that's the mark of high craft, is kind of when you work backwards from the convoluted language all the way back to something very, very simple, falsely simple.
I think that's why you're going to love Little Bird. Because it just feels like it is so rare to have someone like Claudia that can do so much in 3 pages.
Cool.
And it's like, yeah. And also, maybe I'm wrong on this. I have my own opinions about what it means to be self-honest. But I feel like I mostly enjoy people with that sort of you either love her or you don't get it, or don't even care to get it. Because it just feels like even people that are walking contradictions and just are who they are, it's like they have this sort of magnetism, or, they push people away. But I tend to like people that have that sort, because otherwise, if you just blend in and everybody likes you, it's are you ever being truthful about anything? And I think it's the same thing with writing style or even music. There's something to that. This is how I write,
and owning that voice. Yeah.
And I'm not going to change it because of these people that don't like it.
No. Yeah. It's a very unapologetic book, actually, in general, and that it just sort of is. There's something quite zen, actually, about just that fact. It just exists now.
Yeah.
And you can receive it with the same generosity of spirit that it emits itself, or you can not.
And doesn't bother Sheila.
No, and it's quite a quiet book in all of these ways, so it's very interesting. But yeah,
I love that.
Yeah,
this is a great stack so far. What do you think makes sense for the next one?
Well, I mean, these two, maybe this is a good. So the final 2 that I've selected, they kind of relate to one another because I basically cannot detach these people in my mind.
Ooh, I love that.
They're friends.
Yeah.
So Tiziana Lamelia, I've brought Let Us Please Go Bad, which is her latest collection of poetry. Tiziana is a close friend of mine and a poet based here in Vancouver. Ada Smaill-Begovic, I've brought The Cloud Notebook, which is also her most recent book. It's kind of, I guess, prose poetry is maybe what I would describe it as. Both are quite recent. They're close friends. I've known each other for years. I know Ada less well, but Tiziana for sure well. Yeah, I hate to group them together because, of course, they're different books.
Sure.
But they are psychogeographically related in my mind in a way. They both deal with this idea of image and text in messy and confounding ways. Tiziana is primarily an artist, actually, but also a very prolific poet and has written a few books. And we met years ago. I mean, not unlike how we've met today. I saw a very small exhibition she had at a small project space here in Vancouver I think the exhibition was called Neck of Thirsty Flower.
Nice.
And it was just, as a young person, I think I was freshly out of my undergraduate program at the time, and I just immediately connected with the artwork in this exhibition. I just contacted Tiz and just asked her if we could have a conversation. And then that conversation ended up being published in an art magazine called C Magazine here in Canada.
Sweet.
And so that was one of the first maybe journalistic activities I'd ever done as a in the arts.
Wow.
But Tiziana has been working for years with a lot of very eclectic materials. It's hard to even explain her work, but it immediately relates to her writing as well. I think she connects a lot of different materials from, some of it's a bit witchy, some of it's about land and growing things, food, vegetables, and otherwise about pop culture. Her latest project is a film. It's a feature film called City Mouse, Country Mouse, Hamster, I want to say. And it's kind of about, it's very, very funny, but it's about these sort of I don't know, these sort of characters who go to a farm. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
And try and do farm work. People from the city going into the country. Both of these books connect to this idea of material being this very messy source, the sort of raw source of material that connects to form and writing.
Yeah.
This is getting like a bit convoluted now for sure.
That's okay. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. And so the other book, Cloud Notebook, as well, Ada, I think, now teaches at Brown. I guess I would describe her as a poet, but also a theorist. And so very similarly has a very odd way of honing in on the kind of sense. I would describe her as like a poet of the senses in a way that she's sort of describing. She describes her experience as a child refugee, actually, from escaping the Bosnian War, and her family's sort of history in Sarajevo. And then now, of course, she's lived between Vancouver and, I guess, New York, and now Providence, and really works at a kind of microscopic level at the sort of senses. So there's like, just touch, taste, smell. These things are they're like molecular level descriptions that exist and are kind of fragmented and collaged together in this book. And so both Tiziana and Ada have this very collagist. It's interesting that they're very close friends as well, because they have a real collagist and kind of reciprocal relationship to text as a kind of art making in its own right.
Like sometimes this happens where people are like, actually, these are so tied that I can't separate them. They're not always friends.
You can feel, I think, the influence of them on each other as well, which is a very special. I mean, I think in this case, I really do need to read a section.
I was going to say, I was wondering if you could like bring this into the experience of it.
Yeah. Okay. So Tiziana, here's her poem, Trash Lettuce. Hey, freaky angel, I wrote what I wanted, a photograph, I tore it and put it in a bottle. I broke it, your eyes are chocolate chipped, when we still waited. What was it you said the Real Housewives said about repetition? Again, 1 month ago I cooked the trash lettuce. It was tender and hot. You wrote, quote, romanticize repetition, unquote. We walked to the top of the hill and lit cigarettes and sticks in the dark at the rock. I wrote a love letter in red ink and left it on the windowsill and forgot it in the sun. There are so many people in this poem, but it doesn't make you composite. It says, time is something romaine, not like the other lettuce that never goes bad. Lettuce, lettuce, lettuce. Lettuce, please, go bad. Not repeat yourself over and over again, expecting different results. Let us rip off the slimy leaves and eat.
Wow.
So, of course, that's the title poem because the book is called Lettuce, Lettuce, Please Go Bad. But she does this for years has done this very interesting thing, which is kind of connecting sort of the colloquial language of sort of mass culture with like rural speech or something as well. Yeah. So there's kind of this like high-low thing happening in the language and syntax that is particular to her writing, but also is present in a lot of sort of her very collagist aesthetic and assemblages.
Interesting.
And I think always, too, there's this I've told Tiz this before, but like the favorite artwork of hers, she has a public artwork that's in Kelowna in the interior that I've always just thought is like the most amazing public artwork I've ever seen. And there's a small picture of it here. There's a lot of images in this book, by the way. It's a poetry collection.
Whoa, this looks cool.
It's a neon sign that was installed in Kelowna on the side of an industrial, I think, I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it's a former fruit processing plant or something in the Kelowna, which is where a lot of fruit is grown. A lot of orchards exist and where her family has also immigrated. There's like neon language below this sign of a kind of martini with like fruits and vegetables around it in this kind of swishy style that says, you pick tough fruit gently. And it's sort of this weird collage of like nightclub symbolism with fruit picking labor. I almost can't describe it. It's just does something weird to my brain that I think is so interesting and effective. This image in the book doesn't really do it justice, but yeah, you can go look at that.
I love how like fruit labor is in there's multiple books here.
That's interesting.
And then still also food.
It is the food thing.
I know.
Why.
It's it's just there. I feel
I think maybe part of it is like, on the one hand, a lot of the writing that I'm interested in has this intellectual project that's hovering above it. But then there are ways in which it's like brought down to ground, which, happens like through the senses.
Yeah.
And one of those ways is through sort of food. These are just the everyday symbols, and I think there's like other things maybe that are like that as well, but food for sure.
I just find that I love when these natural connections come up that aren't even necessarily like you sitting there in a room in preparation thinking these are the ways that all of them connect, You're just talking about things and then it's like, wait, why are we always at these fruit plants?
Well, and I wonder and so then in Ada's book, The Cloud Notebook, there's also, in here, there are also recipes. Oh, let's see if I can find them, though. Now, when I look for them, I won't be able to find them. How to Survive on Humanitarian Aid. In April 1994, a book of recipes was published in Zagreb. The recipes were based on using the ingredients that were distributed as humanitarian aid in Sarajevo under siege. And so she excerpts some of these recipes in the centerfold, the sepia-toned centerfold of this book. War fish stew, 1 can of fish, half a liter of water, 1 red onion, 3 cloves of garlic, 3 grains of pepper, 1 bay leaf, 1 teaspoon of vegeta, 1 teaspoon tomato paste, half a cup of vinegar, 1 teaspoon sugar, red pepper, rosemary. Drain the canned fish, but do not throw out the oil. Take the bones out of the fish, roll it in flour and fry it in oil. And it goes on and on. So there's all these sort of fragments that are collected in the center of the text that speak to these and there's lots of images and drawings. I believe the drawings are Ada's, but I don't know for sure.
It's like what brings you down to ground, more than here's how to prepare these. It's kind of
And there's found text as well.
Wow.
In the same way, that recipes are one example of that.
Yeah. Like the everyday scraps of that put together a life,
Yeah, and this book is very beautiful. I think form, we're talking a lot about craft and form, and I think this one is one that's just such a courageous example of how to do something very slight but in an elegant way. And so there's the outer narration. There's sort of 2 circles of narration in this book. That is what is very moving, I think. And so the outer narration, I think of it actually as a novel, but it's I don't know what kind of novel it is, but there's sort of the outer circle of narration, is this character speaking in the third person. She does this, she does that, she's moving around. And then there's the centerfold are these sepia-tone pages that are the Cloud Notebook itself, if I'm not mistaken. And so the outer narration is narrating the kind of writing and the everyday surround of the notation that exists in the inner notebook.
Damn, that's sick.
And then you hear the kind of echoes of the same language that repeats. So, so in the outer pages, there will be she writes in her Cloud Notebook, emotions are the only way of having the world repeat itself. She writes in her Cloud Notebook, the lining of the world is supple soft. A snail has secreted a thin sheath of slime around itself. This is written on a blue piece of paper. The milieu of the body is an outside that is more specific than the outside. And it goes on. And then later on, you'll approach the sort of centerfold and you'll see again the opening of that centerfold. Emotions are the only way of having the world repeat itself. The lining of the world is supple, soft. A snail has secreted. So it's kind of like those Russian nesting dolls.
Yeah.
But it's very clever. I think these kinds of formal shapes are really inspiring to me because they show how you can do different things. Also, this one's interesting because it really does carry narration very differently from how I work with story. I wouldn't say it's story in the same way, but it has a narration that's softer and more backgrounded. Where the kind of environment, the textures and the sounds and the sights, the texture of the lawn, the stickiness of the slime trail behind a snail.
I love the snail connection.
The recipes. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, the snail on the cover of my book. That's a nice place to close.
I was like, that's yeah.
But sort of the environments, I think the tents of different sort of refugee encampments and encampments also play a kind of surround role in Ada's work. And I think all of those things bring the environment into the foreground in an interesting way. So it becomes a kind of character. This
feels like it's so interesting. When people choose books that are so helpful to it's this is your brain. There's so much here that connects to your storytelling, but also it's not like you're it's not mimicry. It's not as if I would experience these the same way that I would, but it's interesting here you describe this, like even the ways in which these books are like, what is a book? What is a novel? It could be many things. It could go many ways. And it's fun to see, like, this one in particular, I'm like really drawn to because of how you describe, like, but it just feels like these are very much, I had no idea what you would pick specifically, but it felt like it would be like this.
What I'm even taking away from my own notes on these books that having revisited them this past week is I don't know, just how sources of inspiration can be really far outside of the literary, actually. And so I brought in a lot of, nonfiction in the form of criticism, but also, of course, visual art. Artists are literally writing in this pile. And those are equally important to me as reading, the classics or even the niche examples of literature within capital L literature.
Yeah.
And all of those things, I think, are equal in reference and inspiration in an important way. I
totally agree. I think I don't think there's a single novelist or short story writer that is inspired specifically by fiction. That it's just not who I want them to be so left field. What they would say helps them write a certain story or a certain book. Yeah, this is an exception. Like, so good, so good.
I thought maybe it's also important, I think, for the Cloud Notebook to understand in relation to this. The acknowledgement section of this book is really a standout in the way that it's connecting all of the things I'm talking about in terms of interdisciplinary research and reciprocity, maybe, in writing and art making processes. And so just for example, instead of a standard acknowledgements page, this is what it sort of sounds like. I'll just read the first couple of lines. This book often blurs the distinction between direct citation and oblique reference, but in these different ways, it is in dialogue with, and there is basically many pages of reference.
Yeah.
With Teresa Hak Kyung Cha's text dictée, object, subject, and personal statement, outline of postdoctoral project, Tan Lin's 7 Controllable Vocabularies, and Obituary 2004, The Joy of Cooking, Ida Bagetch's film Snijeg, Snow, Gertrude Stein's play He Said It monologue, a class on Mousse I took at the University of British Columbia in 2004, stories told about the Bosnian War by those in my family who survived it, Karen Barad's Meeting the Universe, RISD, Nature Lab, Leibniz's Monadology. There's basically, it goes through every possible thing. Some of them, I think at one point she even thinks like JJ Bean, her place of employment, which is a local cafe here in Vancouver, and, the orchard by a local transit station and stuff like that. So anyways, I feel a lot of kinship with that idea of writing from a place where all of these things are connected and they're all given kind of equal platform. The spider on your windowsill is given an equal platform to, this very important canonical text that, inspired, Helen Skszew's writing or whatever.
I think that makes sense. So there were two things that I had picked out, and they might not make sense to end on.
Okay.
One of which I was like, I found this story, and I don't really know if it relates to anything.
Yeah.
Totally right now that you're working on.
Yeah.
And it might be too long.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do. But it was this.
Oh, interesting. Yep.
And then the other.
Oh, that's great that you read this.
I loved it.
Yeah. This is like basically from my current manuscript.
Really?
Or my new work, yeah. Yeah. It's the only part that I've published of it, though.
So part of me was like, I just felt like, oh man, I really want you to read this.
Cool.
The only other thing would be shorter, but might not be as relevant.
Yeah.
But I liked this.
Oh, that's funny too.
So, I mean, I don't know, and we don't have to read. We can just I can pick a place that we've already recorded to end on.
Yeah, it's so funny how deep you have dug. Or maybe this thing isn't as deep as I thought it was. It's deep in my mind. Like this one particularly is deep in my mind. It's basically like a poem that I wrote for a very obscure friend's art show in the room of a house here in Vancouver. That was basically distributed like this to exactly 20 people. And that's the only, and then it was put on my website or whatever. So that's the only form that it's
Look, if it's there, I've read it.
That's so funny.
Except your dissertation or your thesis.
Right. Which is secret. Top secret.
So I don't know. You can pick because I don't want to exhaust you with your own reading, but I also was like, these both felt compelling enough that we could do it. But you can choose.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, this is interesting because this and this I've only ever read together, actually, and only exactly once at an event, and it was for this exhibition launch. It was quite a few years. It was a few years ago now, not quite a few, but a few. It was when I had just started, and I just wrote this at that time, and that was the start of whatever is going to become my next thing I'm working on. I mean, my kids are so little, I barely have time. I'm in baby land still. I barely had time to return to it very much, but
oh, that's cool.
That's so funny. It's just cool. I haven't revisited this. It's kind of funny. It's like that Eileen Miles piece that I shared about the poets writing about art.
That's what I was saying.
So I was doing that here, but in a way, it's kind of just a throwaway poem because I was just like, oh, I'll just write a quick poem for my friend just for their show. Like, it's not a big, like, no, it's not a thing. I'm also I don't really write poetry in like a considered way. So it just is a thing that I made in this fragmented
But
form.
I also am like, it fits with everything where it's like,
yeah.
It's a throwaway poem, yeah, but it's like you just do a million things and they're all part of the bigger story here. But that's why when you were talking about that poetry with art, I was like, that's what I was thinking about. I was like, well, because I have one right here.
Interesting. I wonder what would be good.
No, let's do the poem.
Let's do the poem for a more random thing, right?
Yes.
Because I think this would never occur to me. I'll never read this in public, I don't think. So maybe it's nice in this context.
I think you should have it somewhere.
Yeah. Okay.
Think about it. Of all the things I could have printed out and brought here.
Very strange. Mm-hmm. You're a very, very close reader. It's very interesting.
Oh, God. Is that like the Minnesota interesting?
No, it's a good thing. I admire it. I think if I didn't have a baby at home, I would love to be this kind of reader again.
I'm telling you, I'm maximizing it.
Yeah.
Someday my life's going to change.
Yeah.
And I won't be able to do this sort of digging.
It'll be very
but for
chaotic
now,
then.
It's like, for you, I will read.
Embargoed theses. Yeah.
I'm insane, so it's okay.
Okay, this poem has no explanation. It exists in a vacuum, but was written shortly after I think I finished writing The Longest Way to Eat a Melon and was just returning to sort of just the things that excite me in language. It happens to be a poem. I don't really consider myself a poet in the way of writing standalone poems, but it just emerged in that form as a fragment of a current moment in my thinking. Baby voices. I am animate without ever having been told to be exactly anything, alive with my vocal cords at the end of the world. These cords form the basis of my small wants, and I use them without permission to stop time. Early morning mother, I hold you, but do not really need you. Supper time voicings to divide the earth. Mention me even briefly and I'll come whirling. The whole of me otherworldly, composed of electricity, fast-tracking this and that true importance. Other time eyelids fluttering down like you've always been quiet. Compose a day for me and I will still do what I want. Compose a song too and know that I will sing over it, shaking backwards and forwards over your small light, conspiring to end you even as I love you and tell you so vividly. No moment left but an hour between moonfall and calamity. Hardly an hour when you count walking around without voices. Sound dampening banana lane coin-like over warm toast. Every snack desired, then no longer called for, then dissolvable in thin water. Screaming about clouds and their animal shapes and their resemblances to everyone. Hearts swollen from the sadness and the convenience of it. Living without music. Hardly an hour when you count walking. I bend to the high notes, then to the low notes, before deleting myself from the atmosphere, whatever volume remains filtering through my small voice.